In this video, we're going to use n8n and Firecrawl to build an AI automation that can scrape email addresses from any website across the internet. All we have to do is enter in the homepage of a site that we want to scrape email addresses from, and this automation is going to crawl it, extract those email addresses from every single person that it's able to find, and finally, it's going to output it in a very clean format for us to later use. Now make sure you stay and watch until the very end of this video, because I'm going to show you exactly how we combine this workflow with Instantly AI and automate our entire cold outreach process here at the recap. All right, next up, let's jump into a demo of this automation and see if we can scrape some real email addresses. I'm going to click on Execute Workflow to get started, and that's going to pull up this form we've configured to kick off the automation. Under Website URL, I'm going to give the homepage of our own website, aitools.inc, and then under Scrape Limit, I'm going to use this 8 number, which is the number of pages the automation is actually going to crawl through when trying to pull out email addresses. I'll click Submit to get this started, and we can see the automation get underway. The first two nodes I have set up here are going to be the API requests that actually reach out to the Firecrawl API to kick off our scraping operation. After that's done, we're going to move on to this middle section here, which is going to be this looping block, which every few seconds, it's going to go ahead and reach back out to the Firecrawl API on this node and continuously check if that scraping operation is done. If we set a pretty high scrape limit on that very first form input, this can take longer depending on how large the website is and what that number was actually configured to. Once the scraping is determined to be done, we're going to exit out true here and set our final results of what we were able to scrape. So under here on this outside part, we can see the list of our scraped email addresses. And at the bottom here, we can see Lucas at aitools.inc was actually scraped from our results. Let's go ahead and check that on our real website. So here's this author page I have pulled up for me. If I click this copy email address link actually on my page, come back here and paste it in, we can see Lucas at aitools.inc matches up exactly to what we were able to scrape. So it looks like everything worked as we were expecting. Hey, just so you guys know, we're actually giving away this entire AI automation completely for free. This full n8n automation template and all the prompts included inside it can be downloaded for free just by joining our school community called AI Automation Mastery. All you have to do is click on that very first link in the description of this YouTube video to join it, then go to the YouTube n8n Resources tab, click on the post for this video, and then you're going to be able to download a JSON file, which includes the n8n automation template and all the prompts I've used. All right, so now that you guys have seen this automation in action, I want to take you guys through node by node so you can get a better understanding of how this works and what parts make the most sense to change for your specific use cases. So jumping right into it on this very first node here called map website, if we pull this up, we can see this is an HTTP request to the Firecrawl API, and more specifically, this /map endpoint on their API. This is something I want to pause and get a little bit more in detail around, because this is going to be the backbone of how we go from a single URL on the homepage of a website to n number of pages that we need to scrape. So if I jump over to the Firecrawl API docs, just reading straight from this, we can input a website and get all of the URLs on the website extremely fast. This is super useful for us because when we're trying to scrape email addresses, given a website, we don't necessarily know where those email addresses are going to live. And so this is something that's going to execute fast, not eat up a ton of API credits, and is super flexible for finding email addresses. The other part that I want to call out here is going to be this third bullet on the map docs. So need to scrape pages of a website that are related to a specific topic, use the search parameter. And so this is something that our automation does use and allows us to filter down the list of pages that we actually need to scrape from. So let's jump back into n8n and look at our request in a bit more detail. So we are making a post request, which means we need to specify a body that goes along with it for whatever we want to scrape. And so if I blow this up here, we can see for the URL that we want to scrape, we're going to go ahead and grab the dynamic URL that was specified in the form. And so we can see here that the homepage of aitools.inc is the page we want to scrape. Here under limit, just jumping ahead, this is going to be the number of pages that Firecrawl is going to limit the results to. And so if you know you're going to be looking at a very, very large site and don't want to eat up many more credits, this can be something you can change up and down depending on your specific needs and your specific use cases. The larger this limit is, the longer the scrape operation is going to take and the more credits from Firecrawl you're going to end up using. So just something to keep in mind and be aware of as you're building this out and using it on your own. Finally, search here is going to be the important parameter that was referenced here back on the Firecrawl docs. And so for our case, our scraping is really going to be related to finding people's email addresses. This is something that, because of this, we are going to actually provide a search value here and limit the pages we want to look at that have terms like this included. And so if I separate each search term by space, this is going to go ahead and tell Firecrawl that we only want to find pages that are related to, about, contact, company, authors, team, and we can even extend this to any other search options that we want. But this is to give you guys a starting point to filter down the number of pages on the website that we want to look at that are related to people, since we're searching for real people's email addresses. To illustrate this better, I'm going to go ahead and just execute the step, and we can see the results that come back here. And so we were searching, for about page, contact, company, authors, and team. We can see here that we got a pretty good set of URLs that came back instead of the several thousands of pages that actually exist on the AI Tools website. And so this is going to make scraping a lot faster and a lot cheaper for us. So we can see here, just going through a couple of these, the About page, that's a good candidate for a web page that could have an email address. Authors is a really good one. This is going to be a specific author page that's usually about a person. So if I pull this up, we can see my specific one here that actually does have that email address. And so that's a good match to what we're trying to find, and so on and so forth. Now, this isn't perfect. There's going to be things like, it looks like here, this individual tool page was actually matched in the search. But our goal on this map step in the n8n workflow is going to be going from potentially thousands of pages to a more limited and focused set of web pages we can put our scraping efforts toward. So that covers the first step here. The next step we're going to jump into is going to be another HTTP request we're making out to the Firecrawl API, and that's going to be to this /batch/scrape endpoint. So let me briefly show you guys this in the API. So this is under the scrape endpoints. Batch scrape it does pretty much exactly what it says it does. Instead of scraping a single page, what we're able to do is pass in a list of URLs that we want to scrape. So URLs, the URL to scrape, the collection of URLs to scrape. That's going to be the input into this endpoint. And on their side, that's going to kick off a job which scrapes many different web pages all at once. So if I scroll down here, we can see that, we're sending our typical headers to use the API with JSON. We're going to send a body in this request using JSON that we specify below. And then we're going to build an expression that contains all of the request body we need to go ahead and scrape those URLs from before. So the big parameter to pay attention to, I know I have a lot covered here, is going to be URLs. So I'm going to go ahead and take the JSON.links value that we got from the previous node. And so that's the output of this previous node. And we are going to pass that into the expression that builds up our request body for this batch scrape operation. And so that's going to tell Firecrawl, we want to go out and start scraping all of these URLs. So that's the first important thing to cover. The next thing I'm going to get into are these other parameters for building this request. Formats is another big one. Markdown's useful just to have a good, easy to read output of that data we're trying to scrape. I like this when I'm trying to debug it or see what data that Firecrawl is actually able to extract. And then JSON is an important one for this specific use case because that is going to allow us to actually give Firecrawl a prompt that is going to tell Firecrawl to actually run this prompt when performing its own extraction logic. So again, for our use case, since we are trying to extract email addresses from these web pages we passed in, this is going to be kind of the secret sauce of this automation that's able to actually do that. So if I highlight this, just very briefly covering this, we want to extract every unique, fully qualified email address found in the supplied web page. Going forward from that is handling a couple of different normalization scenarios, working around obfuscations that may come up from different security products, and doing its best to take something that is close to an email and being able to get that into a result scraped email for us. So I won't read through all this. I will share this prompt in our free school community, so please be sure to check that out, and I'll move on from here. Going on below into the rest of the request options here, we're just defining the schema, which is going to tell Firecrawl what we want the output to actually look like. This is going to contain really just one list of strings here, which are going to be our email addresses we want as our output. So that covers building up the request to start our batch scrape operation into Firecrawl. So I'll go ahead and kick this off, and we'll get that running next. Next up, I want to jump into and actually cover what is going on in this middle section and why it actually makes sense to approach building our automation this way to avoid errors coming up depending on how big of a website that you're scraping. So in order to get this running, I'm going to go ahead and just click on execute step for the final result, and that's going to go ahead and start this loop we've configured here. The first part is what we're calling rate limit wait. This is a delay, or excuse me, a wait node that we're able to just, give a time interval of a few seconds for how long we want to wait. After that wait is finished up, we're going to go ahead and click on fetch scrape results, which is another HTTP request that goes back out to the Firecrawl API, and it's going to check on the status of this scrape operation that we started here under start batch scrape. So we're going to start it, we're going to wait for a bit, and then we're going to check on that status. If the status here on this if node, where we can route to a true or false, if the status value of that last API call we made is completed, that means the full scraping job is completely done on Firecrawl side, and we're able to continue on with building out the results. If this is something else like pending or processing here under status, that means we're not able to load those results yet, and we need to continue actually going through our loop here to get those final results from Firecrawl. And so when it's false, we come down here to check retry count. We're going to see if the run index of this node is greater than or equal to 12. Run index is something built into n8n that basically tells us for this execution of the automation, how many times has this specific node been ran. And so if it's false, we can see that this increments to 1. If it's false again, on the next time it loops through, it's going to increment to 2. And so that just gives us a counter for how many times we want to check this loop going through before we eventually end up with this too many attempts error. And so this is something that's not set in stone. You can configure it to however you want, but with 12 checks here and with a rate limit wait of 5 seconds, 5 times 12 gives us a minute here that we're going to wait before exiting with this error. So feel free to change that however you need. That's just how I opted to set this up for some of our simple use cases. As that's running through and finally returns true, that means the scrape operation is done. And so if I pull this up, we can go ahead and see how we're building out our final results. This is going to be a set field node, where we're actually doing a manual mapping of what we want to build. And this is going to be just giving us a nice and clean result of our list of every email that was extracted. So there's a little bit of JavaScript code running here to make it clean. But in short, what we're going to do is going to be looking at the node for fetching scrape results and actually mapping the list of every single email address, because we're looking at multiple pages, down to a single list, and then removing anything that's empty. So it's just doing a little bit of cleanup on the data from here. So we can go from this big set of data coming back from Firecrawl to this nice clean list of email addresses that we can see here on this final result set field node. Next up, I want to show you guys how to take what we've built so far and how to extend it even further for your own use cases. What we're going to do is take the emails that we've scraped so far, add on these 2 extra nodes at the very end here, and take these emails and push them into a drip campaign that is going to start emailing them a cold email sequence. We're going to use Instantly AI for this, just like what we do here at the recap when we're trying to get in touch with AI product owners and get their tools listed on our AI tools directory. So before I go too much further and jump into these next 2 nodes, I want to share a little bit about what Instantly does and how we're using Instantly AI here at the recap. In short, Instantly is this AI-enabled cold email platform that really takes care of a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to warming up email addresses, managing email sequences, and actually unifying all the responses that come back from leads into a centralized inbox. We like this because we don't have to actually juggle a lot of different Gmail inboxes ourselves when we start scaling up cold email. And so really it takes care of most of the heavy lifting on cold email. When it comes to our setup here at the recap and getting tools listed on our AI tools directory, we have it configured pretty simply. If I come over to the campaigns tab and go to this product hunt launches campaign, we can actually jump into our sequence that we have configured here that we're going to hook up into our current workflow. Over here on the left-hand side, we can see 3 steps here that each correspond to an email that's going to go out to one of the leads for an email address that we just scraped. On step 1, if I preview this, we can see we're starting off with a congrats on the product hunt launch and have an actually AI written unique hook in the scope that references their product. The next step is our pitch, where we're going to ask them if they'd be interested in actually listing their tool on our AI tools directory. And then finally, we close this up with our brief call to action, where we want to send them our questionnaire to get them listed. That's email number 1. As it goes through, we're going to wait a day. If there's no reply, send email 2, which is a brief check-in with the lead, super quick and easy. If no reply comes back there, we're going to jump ahead to step 3, which is then our final follow-up to see if they actually want to continue going forward, getting their tool listed on our directory. And so as soon as we actually add one of our leads into this campaign called Product Hunt Launches, which we've set up, that's all we have to do when interacting with the lead's email and orchestrating this whole sequence of events. Instantly, after that lead gets added, they're going to be able to take care of all of the heavy lifting that goes along with actually scheduling this message to go out during business hours on one of the normal days of the week, and handles all of the follow-ups and will route any replies they send back to this Unibox tab here on the Instantly dashboard. So that's a quick primer on Instantly. Let's jump back to n8n and actually go through the other 2 nodes we added. So as you recall, on the set result node here, we can see that we basically cleaned up all of the email addresses from the fire call API response and built them into this list here. What we want to do is actually use the split out node to take that list and to see 3 separate items. So we got one list coming in. We're going to see that gets split out into 3 separate output items. That is going to allow us to create each of those leads individually and get them enrolled into that drip email sequence that I just went over before. If I jump into here, this create lead node that I've set up, this is actually just going to be your typical HTTP request to the Instantly API. What we're going to do is call into this /leads endpoint, pass in our credential that we've set up using our Instantly AI API key, and send this body to get them actually enrolled. All we need is the email that we want to pass through, and so that's going to be the split out email address. So if I pull this up, we can click through each of those 3 items. So we have all 3 emails that were scraped. That's going to be executed in 3 separate HTTP requests. And then on this final parameter we're passing through is going to be the campaign we want to enroll them in. And so this is the ID we have set up here for our campaign that we just covered before to get them into this Product Hunt Launches drip email sequence. So that's all there is to it. Depending on your specific workflow, your needs, your use case, or whatever your client is doing, you have a lot of flexibility on taking these emails and pushing them off to some other system. All right, guys, that's a wrap for this video. Really hope you all found it helpful and are going to be able to apply what you learned in this video to your future AI automations and future cold email campaigns. Like I mentioned before, everything found in this video can be downloaded completely for free, including the n8n automation template and each of the prompts that I use. All you have to do is click on that very first link in the description of this YouTube video to join our community called AI Automation Mastery, and then you're going to get access to all of those resources. And finally, please make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button below, as in the very near future, we're going to be releasing a ton more AI automation content. This is going to include tutorials like how to automate your SEO articles, how to build more social media agents, and how to automate parts of your sales process. So join our community. Please leave a comment on what you want to see next time, and then we'll catch you later.